Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm excited to share my presentation and also hear about other presenters' take on AI and digital humanities. My name is Moeka Kiyohara. I recently completed an MA from the University of East Anglia in the UK, and now I work as a research center assistant in Kobe University, Japan. So, as a researcher, I mainly work in the field of pragmatics, which is a subfield of linguistics that looks at how language is used in social interactions. And outside of academia, I also work as a translator, which is why I want to discuss AI translation from a humanities perspective today. So, my presentation is called Suggesting a Language Specific Gender Perspective into AI Translation Research. The title does not specify, but I'm going to talk about gendered speech styles in Japanese and in the context of English to Japanese translation. I'm going to turn off my camera for the rest of the presentation, if that's okay, because my internet's not very good. Okay, so here's just a quick outline. I'm going to first talk about what kind of research has been done in the field of AI and translation very quickly. And after that, I'm going to introduce the gendered speech styles in Japanese. And then it's followed by the challenges of incorporating gendered language in AI translation. And finally, I want to discuss some potential approaches. So through this presentation, I hope to share some approaches and some viewpoints to look at AI translation and gender from a Japanese language specific point of view, because language is something we use every day and it's familiar to all of us, but it's very divergent and there's no one fits all theory. So I believe it's important that topics like this are looked at from a specific language specific standpoint. So, AI and translation research has been mainly discussed from a technological standpoint. Translation is probably one of the most studied areas in relation to AI, but the focus has been on the computer science, and not many scholars has discussed it from a humanities standpoint, especially when it comes to the relation of gender and language. And since 2010, neuro-machine translation, or NMT, has become the dominant system. So what we use on a daily basis, like Google Translate or DeepL, are based on this model. With NMT, the machine trains by repeatedly processing a large amount of translation data. So this raises some issues like the lack of interpersonal aspects. So the data used for AI training usually features one fixed social relationship between speakers, but in real life, we change our speech styles depending on who we're talking to and what kind of relationship we're in with that particular person. And this isn't just limited to gender, but there's also the potential of sustaining and reinforcing dominant ideologies, because NMT works by predicting a sequence of words. So naturally, the majority opinions, dominant opinions, are reflected more in the translation. And in terms on research on AI translation and gender bias, there's been some research on European languages. So this research looks at Hungarian, which uses a gender-neutral subject, but when the sentences were translated into English, traditionally male-dominant occupations like scientist and doctor were translated with he, whereas occupation like baker, nurse were translated with she as their subject. So now I want to introduce some gendered speech styles that's unique to the Japanese language. Um, there are many different ways to discuss this gender differences in Japanese, but what I want to focus on today is what's called yakuwarigo. Japanese is one of the rare languages that has speech styles reserved for the use by particular groups of speakers, and Kinsui called these speech styles yakuwarigo, which translates to role language in English. These speech styles convey a social attribute of the speaker. So it's not just limited to gender, but also includes age, social status, occupation, and birthplace, etc. And here I have a table to give some examples of the two main types of gendered yakuwarigo, the feminine language called onna kotoba and the masculine language otoko kotoba. I'm not going to go over all of these, but there are first person pronouns, second person pronouns, and there are some verb endings and sentence final particles that's designed for the use of female and male speakers, respectively. And these are typically associated with certain characteristics, such as politeness, softness, elegance, and a request for female language, and assertion, toughness, persuasion, and command for the masculine language. It's important to note that gender diacritical is not exclusively used by male or female speakers always, but it's rather a linguistic marker to signal femininity and masculinity. So that means there are situations where female speakers use the masculine language to convey, for example, a sense of confidence or assertiveness, and vice versa with male speakers. So English does not have this kind of gender markers. So that means that in the case of English to Japanese translation, gendered linguistic features can be added during the process of translation, regardless of the original speaker's intention. So here's an example of what can happen with AI translation. This is an excerpt from Hitomi Kanehara's novel called Autofiction, and I have the official English translation by David Karashima on the left, and the translation, Japanese translation of Karashima's English translation in the middle, and then finally the very original Japanese written by the author on the right. So as it's reflected in Karashima's English translation, the original Japanese version has quite a confrontational, offensive tone because this character, who's a female, thinks another woman is trying to steal her husband. But the original Japanese also uses some gender neutral sentence endings and also some masculine linguistics features such as the second person pronoun omae and the sentence ending daro, and also it has a swear word. So in this specific context, the writer intentionally uses a masculine language to portray the character's anger. But the default translation in the middle uses soft feminine linguistic features, probably because the AI identified the speaker as a female based on this context. But in this specific text, using feminine language would ruin the point. So what's interesting about Yaguarigo is that it's actually not commonly used by real life Japanese speakers, but it's more used commonly in fictional works and translated text. Nakamura has done a great amount of work into gender yaguarigo and translation, and she suggested that the traditional ideologies about gender in Japan, especially that of women, have been preserved not by Japanese women but non-Japanese speaking women through translation. So here I have some graphs to show how commonly female speakers use gender yaguarigo in translated fiction and versus real life conversations. We have two translated fictional works, The Devil Wears Prada and Bridget Jones's Diary, and also two different groups of real life female Japanese speakers based on their age group. So the light blue bars show the percentage of the use of feminine language, and the dark blue bars the use of masculine language. And you can see that female speakers in translated fiction use gendered feminine speech at a significantly higher percentage compared to real life speakers. And on the other hand, real life female Japanese speakers use gendered language with much less frequency overall. But on top of that, they use both feminine and masculine language regardless of their identity. What's interesting here is that the younger generation, aged 18 to 23, actually use masculine linguistic features more often than feminine linguistic features, according to Okamoto and Sato's study. So this poses a question: if gender equality is not really used by real life speakers, why don't we think it's unnatural for non-Japanese speakers to use it? I have an example from Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone here, where Hermione Granger says, "Oh, are you doing magic? Let's see it then." And as you can see, the original English sentence doesn't really contain gendered linguistic features. It sounds like something anyone can say. But if you look at the Japanese translation, it uses feminine linguistic features such as ara, no, and wa. Especially considering that Hermione is an 11-year-old girl, it should feel unnatural for us to see her speak in such an overly feminine way, but we don't. Nakamura argues that what allows us to accept this discrepancy is the separation of the body and the voice. So when we engage in translated text, we simultaneously hear the original voice, in this case Hermione's voice, and the translator's voice. So in some sense, this intertextuality of translation allows us to sort of dehumanize and alienate the speaker by separating their identity from language use. And this practice of using gender yaguarigo in translation gives the translator the authority to some extent control how the speech is received by the audience. And Nakamura says that non Japanese figures and characters, particularly white men and women, have been used as a body to project and preserve traditional Japanese gender ideologies through translation. So now I want you to think about what kind of challenges this can raise in the context of AI translation. First, there's the concern for ethics. With human translation, that translator usually carefully considers if the speech style is suitable for the context, and if so, to what extent it should be used. Many translators, in fact, are aware of the potential risk of using gender yakuwarigo, but with an automated system like NMT, this kind of gatekeeping process does not exist. There's also the concern of the diversity of training data. That training data used for NMT is mostly written language, and which tends to present more stereotypical gendered features in the case of Japanese. But from the user's perspective, AI translation can be used for both written and spoken language, so there's a bit of a mismatch there. And finally, as we know, AI translation can process a large volume of text in an instant, which again also contributes to the body of training data. By repeating this cycle, there's a risk that the translation produced with NMT over time becomes more and more stereotypical and contributes to the maintenance of gender ideologies that's not actually reflected in people's real life speech. So finally, I want to think about some humanities approaches to look at AI and translation in relation to gendered language. So first, I have function-based approaches, which focuses on why the text is being translated instead of what is translated. I have a text typology theory by Rice. So according to Rice, there are roughly three different types of text. And this idea looks at text at the level of communicative achievement. So this is something we can use to analyze the translation based on these text types. And there's a Scopus theory by Fermat. This considers the purpose of translation. So we can ask ourselves questions like, is the purpose of this translation to properly convey the speaker's gender identity, or is it more to exaggerate the expression for entertainment purposes? But this might be more difficult to apply to AI translation, as the purpose is not always clear unless you have contact with the original writer. And secondly, I have discursive approaches, which includes critical discourse analysis, which analyzes linguistic structure of text to uncover how certain ideologies are constructed and maintained through language use. So I feel that this is quite a compatible method of analysis with AI translation as well. And another thing is the idea of communities of practice. Community of practice is a group of people that share a common interest, passion, or goal. So this could be a friend group or a work community. And what it means to be a certain gender can be different depending on what community of practice you're participating at the time. So using this framework, we can see the concept of gender and its relevance to the linguistic interaction in a more dynamic way instead of a static way, like this person identified as female, so they use feminine language. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and I 20 minutes is a short time, and I feel like I had to run through it. It was a lot, but here are some references I used. And if you have any questions or wish to contact me, please do so through my Gmail here. So thank you very much.